Hi, this is Tom Rhodes. Please join me as I scour the four corners of the earth to bring you interesting, intelligent, funny people who will enrich your life with wisdom and laughter. I'll take you to Europe, Australia, all over America. I might take you to the peaks of Machu Picchu, the canals of Amsterdam, the Great Wall of China, or the swamps of Florida, and certainly the many, many comedy clubs and comedy theaters all over the world. Come hang out with me and meet the many interesting people that pop up in my life as I travel the world as a stand-up comedian. You're listening to Tom Rhodes Radio Smart Camp.
Karate kick, baby! And remember, my little bun, never get frazzled and smack the shit out of the big one.
Hooray! I love you, Mommy. Jared Logan, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining my humble little program.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time.
I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Great start.
No, it's true, but it is true, though. It is absolutely true. I mean, when I was a kid, I watched your show, your sitcom, and I really did. Seriously? Like, almost religiously, yes.
No way.
I loved Mr. Rhodes.
Oh, my God.
And then I've just always kind of followed your stand-up career after that. So, yeah, I've probably seen a lot of your, like, whatever TV sets you did and things like that.
I can't believe it. I think I have now officially met all three of the fans of the Mr. Rhodes.
I did. I was like, a couple of years ago, I was just watching them on YouTube. I swear to God.
I put up I put up like about 5 or 6 episodes.
Maybe I was watching your episodes that you threw up.
And then YouTube made me take them down because NBC owned it.
Right. Yeah, they're the most litigious of the networks about that kind of stuff. The whole NBC, I think. The whole NBC Viacom family.
I don't think they're missing out on a lot of cash of a few Mr. Rhodes episodes.
I don't think so either. You think there'd be someone who'd make a decision and go, I think all the old stuff should be available, stuff from the 90s.
Yeah.
Why not? I use it for research. Like when I'm doing a podcast or even if I'm writing certain jokes, I research stuff on YouTube, so...
I do too. It's incredible. I mean, like even like learning how to do recipes or I'm not a handyman, so I've looked up a few like how-to videos. I mean, it can be magical.
Free the information. Let us have all of it. I don't want to get in trouble with the federal government, but I illegally download some things sometimes.
And then they kick in the door and we're going to jail.
No, they can't catch me. I've got hacking tricks.
That's cool. I don't think that's a problem. And my wife and a few other people never let me speak ill of that sitcom. I've always so I'm touched that you actually watched it.
I really did, and I really loved it. I really did.
So I wanted to have you on the show for a long time. I moved to LA 3 years ago, and you and I did a show.
It's about the same time as I did. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where did you move here from?
I moved here. I was in New York City.
And where are you from?
I'm from West Virginia.
Oh my God! And you don't have that accent.
No, I don't have it at all. My brother and my mom and dad have a strong accent, and I think I kind of lost it, almost partly on purpose. Like I was into acting early on, and I was like, I can't let people know that I'm from West Virginia. They'll hate me. So I kind of, that's a whole lot of baggage we could get into. But,
yeah, I've done a joke about the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. It's the biggest festival. It's the biggest Shakespeare festival in North America.
Yes, yeah.
And Juliet, where the hell you at, girl? I mean, it's just, the joke it's waiting to happen, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
But I could see you doing with the thick West Virginia accent. Very nice dramatic roles.
Right. No, I learned standard American English so that I could be in those, kitchen sink plays from the 40s, and then I guess I just kind of still talk like that. It comes out in certain words. My wife makes fun of me because I say, she says that I say certain words wrong. Umbrella and stuff like that.
I would say that's wrong. Yeah.
Umbrella. I really do say it like that, and And I've had people from West Virginia go, "Dude, we don't even call it that. What are you doing?" But it comes out oddly in certain words.
Well, I worked with you right when I moved here.
Yeah.
On it was a show at the Improv, and you did this bit that like blew my mind. I see your many books on the shelves here in your home, and my home is filled with books. I love knowledge, and I have my own historic obsessions.
Right.
And you did this bit about the Lincoln assassination, but it was more about John Wilkes Booth, the kind of actor he was.
Yeah,
and I was so blown away by this, and I'd never heard it before.
It's really kind of amazing. So I think a lot of people might know John Wilkes Booth. It was an actor.
Killed Lincoln, and then I'll let you tell the whole story, but the most important piece of information is that his father was a very famous, beloved actor.
His brother, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was his dad.
Yeah, it was his brother. Okay. Yeah. So his brother was extremely famous. Like, he was the, Tom Cruise of his time or whatever. And then John was a little bit in his shadow, John Wilkes Booth. And I just started kind of looking into it a little bit, because I really for a long time been fascinated with the presidents who died. And I love that. Have you ever seen the musical Assassins? Mm-mm. Oh, fantastic Stephen Sondheim musical that's just about all of the presidential assassins. So there's a song for John Hinckley Jr., there's a song for John Wilkes Booth, there's a song for everybody, Lee Harvey Oswald. So that's what kind of got me into the presidential assassins when I was young, because I told you I was like doing theater and stuff. And then I've just kind of read a lot of books about it since
I'm an
then.
actor, I could kill a president.
Right.
Okay.
That's it, I mean, one surefire way to get famous in the acting business. But John Wilkes Booth was, what I didn't know until I kind of looked into it a little bit, was that he was a bad actor. By that I mean, like, there's a reason he was in the shadow of his brother. It's like it doesn't seem like he tried very hard, because he was by all accounts a very handsome dude for the time. People really loved the way he looked, but in many of his performances, there are reports that he would drop his lines, he would forget his lines, and he would kind of, send the play into disarray. And in one particular play, he was in a play called, it was Lucretia Borgia. Do you know who that was in history, Lucretia Borgia?
No.
Lucretia Borgia was a Renaissance figure. She was a daughter of a pope. And she was a famous temptress. So they had made this into a play, and John Wilkes Booth is in this play, and his opening line, the first line he was supposed to say when he walks out, he was supposed to say, "Madam, I am Petruchio Pandolfo," just introducing his character, right? But there are newspaper reports. Reviewers said that what he actually did was he walked out and he messed up his line. He went, "Madam, I am Pandolfo. Madam, I am Pandolfo. Madam, well, who the hell am I?" Talk about the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. He looked out at the crowd and he went, "Well, who the hell am I anyway?" And the crowd, of course, the audiences are stupid, so they loved that. Like, they didn't care that he was ruining someone's play that they'd written or bringing the play to a grinding halt. They thought that was awesome. They got on their feet and they cheered him, and they made him feel like he'd really pulled a trick. And so the way I end that story is to say that when I was working at a theater in 2002, Tyler Perry would do plays. And that's what Tyler Perry started doing before he did films. And Tyler Perry brought a play to Memphis, where I went to college. And the play was called, it was a Medea play. You're familiar with the Medea?
The Medea films, yes.
Yes.
I didn't see any of them on purpose, but I'm familiar with them.
Oh, man. The early ones are actually kind of interesting. But even before he did those, he did these plays. And the one that came to the theater was called Medea's Class Reunion, the Class with No Class. And I had to see what this was. I'd never heard of Tyler Perry or Medea, and so I was working at this theater, and I went in and watched it. And Tyler Perry's doing the Medea character. He's got a voice, and he's got he's in drag. He's got the wig on and everything. And in the middle of the play, he just suddenly freezes. Like, he'd been talking, "I'm Medea, and then all of a sudden freezes and doesn't say anything for a while. And then he looked at the crowd and he went, "Don't you hate it when you can't remember your lines?" And they loved it. They were on their feet cheering him and clapping and everything. And I say that is how John Wilkes Booth is like Tyler Perry.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that cheap trick still works today.
I bet. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely it does.
And then the thing that really stood out in the story that you told on stage that night to me was you said he would deliver all of his lines in this one particular way, like where he would very just high volume. He would.
He wasn't good. Yeah, he wasn't good.
He would deliver the way you told it. It really killed me. You were like he would deliver everything like super loud and above all the actors, where everyone else is speaking like normal human levels. And this guy is. It was a cheap kind of stunt for attention.
Actors back then probably had like a different style than they did even like 30 years later. People started being more realistic, but yeah, at the time they probably all kind of recited. But yeah, I read some things that said that he would particularly walk to the lip of the stage. He was a stage hog.
Yeah.
He would walk to the lip of the stage. He would be louder. He would talk over other people. Sure. So it makes sense that a guy like that, when those kind of tricks aren't working after a while, would get really involved in a very radical conservative cause.
Yeah.
We see actors doing things like that now. So, their careers sort of start to fade. And, well, it can't be their fault because they're amazing. They're geniuses. So it must be the world that's wrong. I guess it's time to join the neo-Nazis. I guess it's time to read the Daily Stormer. You see it every once in a while.
Yeah, and he was trying to. He wanted to reestablish the antebellum South glory, which never really existed.
No.
I brought a couple of books. It's been years since I read them. I just wanted to show them to you.
Sure.
This one is Manhunt.
I have Manhunt. I love Manhunt.
Great book.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Manhunt, the 12-day chase for Lincoln's killer. Fascinating story.
Yeah.
And then it was like...
They made a movie, too, didn't they?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Or maybe it's based on another book, but there's a movie with Robin Wright Penn.
There was like a slave on the Potomac or something. He was like the only witness that saw them cross over. Or
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's one tidbit that I remember.
The film I saw, see, I'm mangling everything, but the film has Robin Wright Penn. I forget what it's called, but she was Wilkes Booth's, I think, mother. She plays, and they bring her before, they put her on trial because they're trying to just get everybody and connect everybody to the conspiracy. Actually, that's what it's called. The film is called The Conspirator, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And then this book, Beware the People Weeping. Public Opinion and the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
I really like this one because Manhunt's a pretty famous book. You can tell it's what you call a mass market paperback. You can find it at a Borders, but this Beware the People Weeping. This is like This looks like it was published by a university or something.
I think it was a university course or something somewhere, and I found it somewhere years ago.
See, I'm such a book nerd that when I see stuff like this, I'm like, I get a little book boner.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
So, and I'm reading this incredible book now. It's called Fantasyland. It came out last year. My wife read it last year. There was like 12 pages excerpted for the Atlantic magazine, and it was the cover. And it's kind of how America arrived at where we are now, with with like just magical thinking and people believing whatever they want. And it makes the case that a lot of this started in 1967. It wasn't just the hippies; it was also the religious freaks that decided, we can flop around on the floor and speak in tongues, and mega churches started to take hold, and all these things.
And I was raised that way. Did you know that?
I'm from hardcore Christian fanatics myself.
You are, really?
Yeah.
Where from?
I grew up in a little town. My family's originally from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And then we moved to Oviedo, Florida when I was 12, which is a little town outside of Orlando. Well, now Orlando grew, and it's a highway exit.
It swallowed it, yeah.
But when I grew up there, it was a charming little citrus village. And
so you were raised Pentecostal?
My mom, first we were Catholic, then after my mom got divorced with my father, she started going to a Pentecostal church for about 3 years or so, I'd say. And, you had the people flopping around on the floor and speaking in tongues, and it was the same people every week. And I honestly believe that it is possible for the Holy Spirit to enter a human being's body and make them flop around on the floor and speak in tongues. I honestly believe that.
Yeah.
But not every week.
Sure. This is so funny that you had the exact same experience
every week. I mean, come on. It's like a bottle of wine. You got to pass it around and share it.
Absolutely. No. You had the exact experience I did, we were so far away. I was in like West Virginia, but like my grandmother, my grandfather was the pastor. My grandmother used to speak ill of the ladies that would flop every week, that would fall down every week.
Yeah.
Yes. She would say that they were faking it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
That was the feeling I was left with.
I had a very negative view of religion for a long time, and then I kind of came around on it. I read a lot of the hardcore atheist books, you know.
I kind of had a similar, I moved to San Francisco when I was 22 and really got into subversive literature and everything. And then you start reading about, especially like the Catholic Church and all the things they've done throughout history.
Yeah.
God, that's weird. And then I went to Rome a few times in the last 10 years, and I started feeling better about the Catholic Church because it's really pretty powerful to go to the Vatican.
It is.
And I've been in Mass there twice.
That's amazing.
Once with Benedicto and once with Francis. And it's like going to a concert. It's pretty cool. But now, in recent years, especially with what just came out in Pennsylvania, it's like the whole church seems to be a cover for pedophile rings.
You know what's...
So like I've got some Pope Francis. I got a Pope Francis bobblehead doll. I bought in Rome, and I took it off the shelf. So
yeah, you still want to be reminded of all that darkness.
Yeah.
But you know, my other passion is like medieval history, and like the Catholic Church was always just riddled with sexual malfeasance, like constantly. Like there are many different reforms in history where they were like, we have to go in and like in England at one point they had to shut down all the abbeys because it was just they were just having orgies. Like priests were begetting all of these babies, but then they wouldn't take care of them. They'd be like, good luck. I live here in this church, and you can take care of the child.
I'm hanging out with all the guys eating the best cuts of meat.
Yeah.
You guys can make soup out of the intestines.
Not my problem. Obviously, it's not my kid. I'm a priest, right? And so, and you know, we mentioned Lucretia Borgia, because Wilkes Booth was in that play. Like, her father was the Pope, and he was one of the number one perpetrators of craziness in the Catholic Church. Just decadent living like the Kardashians, only with more excess, like parties every night in the Vatican. So I think that well, it's like everything. Religion's done a lot of good, and it's also done so many horrible things. But you could say that about TV, capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, it's
good. I think you know, like my oldest brother was a drug addict and had a lot of problems with the law, in and out of jail, and then he became a super born again Christian, and he can be irritating with the quoting scripture all the time, but you know, at least he's not in prison and doing drugs and stuff.
Sometimes I feel like younger people, you know, you hear what they're dealing with every day, and you're kind of like, maybe they should wait to have sex till they're like in a serious relationship or married. You know, maybe they should follow some of that old stuff that I thought was so lame, that kind of hillbilly wisdom that my grandmother would shove down our throats and quote scripture at us. Sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of glad that stuff was forced on me early. It stopped me from making some pretty bad mistakes. You know, drugs, alcohol, all of that. And then later when I was like, you know, it took me a while because I was such a religious kid. When I was in college and I think I was a little bit more ready to handle it, then I experimented with some of that stuff, you know. And it turned out okay for me. So I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I think I would take my kid to church if I had a kid.
Yeah? Nice.
Maybe, yeah. I think so, yeah.
Well, I'm going to do this Israel tour in December.
Oh, awesome.
I don't know if you've heard about it. There's this big tour, and my mother, super Jesus freak. She's going to be 80 next year, and my mom is. It's nice to have a super Jesus freak mom. Times I've been in trouble in my life or worried about something, and to know that your mom's praying for you. I've always found that very very comforting and warm and fuzzy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring my mom over there.
Awesome.
And going to go in early and spend a few days in Jerusalem and walk the streets that Jesus walked.
Have you been there before?
I've never been there.
Nor have I.
Yeah.
No.
So
I would love to go. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, but I mean, there's all kinds of other things to worry about there. With
there are
the mistreatment of a large number of people who live there and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, my dream is I've told my wife a bunch of times. My dream is to see the pyramids, and I've even had Americans tell me, other Americans don't go there right now. Don't go to Egypt. Don't go. And then I'll talk to someone who's been there, and they're like, "What are they talking about? You'd be fine. Just go."
Well, I think it was about 6-7 years ago. Maybe it was 10. It was a bunch of tour buses with tourists, and some guys with machine guns just came up and murdered about 80 of them.
It's no, I get why people feel that way, but sometimes I'm like, it's not gonna. It's pretty conceited to think it's gonna happen to your bus. You know what I mean? Like, wow, how important are you? Like, I used to have friends after 9/11 who were like, I will not get on a plane, and you're like, well, you must think very highly of yourself that the terrorists are gonna target a flight between Memphis and Alabama to blow out of the sky. Like, you think that that's really gonna happen?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm being cheeky.
Well, I've wanted to. The pyramids are one thing that I've checked off a lot of big. I just went to the Great Wall of China for the 3rd time.
That's awesome.
Last month, and I've been to Angkor Wat. I've been to Chichen Itza.
I got to Angkor
Machu
Wat.
Picchu.
I got to Angkor Wat. Yeah, I mean, I haven't. Machu Picchu. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That was one of the best trips I ever took in my life. Was Peru. But yeah, for some reason I don't have a strong pull to go to the pyramids in Egypt.
Oh yeah, I love all of the Egyptian iconography. I'm such a big dork, Tom. I like all that the magic and mummies and all of that crap. I'm huge on it. I'm sure that's how the people of Egypt like to be thought of, as a magical mummy place.
Ancient Egyptians were really fascinating. One of my favorite stories about the ancient Egyptians, they worshipped cats.
Yeah.
They were really, they had such a high regard for cats that some invading army came in and they all had cats with knives and they were going to stab, and all the Egyptians surrendered.
That's amazing.
Because they just came in they had, these cat hostages they were going to kill if they didn't do what they were told.
That's very cool. Yeah, the last thing I read about Egypt was how we always think that the pyramids were built by slaves, and these archaeologists went in recently and they kind of dug up around the pyramids where people would have been working, and what they found was there's a lot of evidence that there were all these stores and businesses built up around the pyramids while they were being built, which leads people to believe that these guys got paid and maybe they were working for scrip like miners did in the 30s and 40s, but there was this big economy around them. Probably it had booze and women or whatever, but there was this whole little town that was built up around it when they were building the pyramids.
Awesome, I didn't know that.
And it's interesting because they're building a grave for the king. They're building literally a holy object, but they're workers, so they need to be catered to as a big population of workers.
I heard that the first billboards were in ancient Egypt, and they were for baldness cures.
Nice.
And also the first contraceptions were the ancient Egyptians. It was crocodile poop, something like that.
Just smear crocodile poop on your genitals.
Imagine, you got a boner, and now you got to find a crocodile.
Yeah, you got to wrestle a crocodile, just squeeze him. Squeeze out that contraceptive.
You expect me to still have a boner after this?
I think things are much better now. No, but that billboard stuff's like so awesome to me because I read this other book like about the Punic Wars, Rome and Carthage, right? And like we think like back then like people didn't use like billboards and stuff like that, or they didn't have like we have Mickey Mouse and Spider-Man, and they had all of that stuff and they used it. Like the reason they built all those statues would be like this guy'd be like conquering a bunch of territory and he'd be like build a statue of Hercules and then also put his name on it and be like, Hercules likes me. We're the same guy. And people like would believe it. They would be like, he's the new Hercules. Like, so there was all this branding back then, and a lot was done with like the messaging, right? The advertising you're doing for your campaign to conquer Spain or whatever. That all had a lot of like stuff around it that wasn't just killing people and looting their town. There was a lot of like what do you call it, public opinion warfare that was going on as well.
Yeah, like my wife and I have talked about this, about like portraits and paintings and stuff. I mean, that was basically like today's Instagram. Like people trying to impress their friends, wealthy people, and show they're like, hey, look, my life is so fabulous. This is me in my nice outfit and posing with some hounds and a hunting rifle or something.
Yeah, that's but you got to come over to my house to see it. But yes, here are my experiences. I always think of like, so my wife speaks Italian and we were in Rome. It's been a little while now, but we went to the Capitoline Museum there. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And there's the Renaissance artists, like I always think of them pitching their paintings like a TV show. Like they go in and they're like, okay, it's the story of Abraham and Isaac. And the guy's like, oh, we've done that. And no. This time there's a horse in the background and God is a lightning bolt. Oh, okay, tell me more, because they had to have these guys pay for it and it cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they had to go and pitch their ideas to the people that were funding their art, just like people have to do today. It's kind of interesting.
Wow, that's awesome. What are your other historical obsessions?
Well, I mean...
Is there anything else about the Lincoln assassination?
I can talk about Zachary Taylor a little bit. Do you know anything about Zachary Taylor?
In Key West, there is Fort Zachary Taylor, which is one of my favorite beaches.
Nice.
In Florida. My wife and I had 2 weddings. I was supposed to get married on April 22nd, and my little sister, who I was very close with, had breast cancer, and it went very bad right before we were going to get married.
I'm sorry.
And on April 19th, they said she's got 24 hours to live. We were married at her hospital bedside at the Orlando Regional Medical Center. And then we weren't sure we were still going to go to Key West and get married, and then we ended up going to Key West. And because my sister was Catholic, it was Easter weekend, and no priest is going to give up Easter. So her funeral wasn't until the Monday. So then we ended up going to Key West, and we got married for the second time on the beach at Fort Zachary Taylor with our feet in the water because my wife wanted to be connected to the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I don't know that much about Zachary Taylor. Other than he's got a really nice beach in Key West.
We got married near a body of water, too, my wife Kara and I. But Zachary Taylor. So he was the 9th president. And he's one of the ones that die in office, right? There's 8 that died in office. That's a lot. You don't realize 8 presidents died.
I think on average, a lot of them have been assassinated as well.
Half of those have been assassinated out of the ones who've died in office. So Zachary Taylor was the 9th president, and he was I think 2 years into his presidency. So he was halfway into his term, and he went to a street fair, a 4th of July street fair there in Washington, D.C. And he ate either some bad cherries or some bad milk. People aren't sure. It was one of those things. And the next day, he died. He died from complications from whatever he ate. And the certificates that the physicians wrote out about his cause of death say cholera morbus. Do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
It's a very old-fashioned 1800s way of saying very bad diarrhea.
Ooh.
So we had a president who shit himself to death.
Wow.
Now, people argued about this for a long time. They said, historians, as time went on, they said, something happened there. Something happened. He didn't just eat bad food, right? Because he was abolitionist, right? And this was pre-Civil War. So there were a lot of people who wanted to keep that antebellum South going. So historians were like, he was poisoned. I bet he was poisoned, right? And then nobody ever came forward to claim that they had been the one that did it. So this became such a point of contention that in the early 90s, I'm not making this up, they dug up his body and they performed what's called a radiocarbon test that would be able to tell them if somewhere in his bones and his body he had like arsenic or something that could have been thrown into his milk, his 4th of July milk. You know how on the 4th of July you get crazy, you have some milk? Well, they were going to find that arsenic. So they did this test, and do you know what they found out? It was just diarrhea. He just had diarrhea. He was just shitting. There was no poison.
Really?
And then they put the body back in the ground. I would be mad if I were like the descendant of Zachary Taylor. I'd be like, you found nothing? Nope, it was just diarrhea. So I just think it's kind of amazing you can be, you know, arguably the most powerful man in the world, and you still end up shitting yourself to death on a bed somewhere.
Wow. You know, they didn't have good toilet paper back then either.
No. It was just straight off it was the bark of a tree, I think.
Can I have another corn cob in here, please?
Yeah, that couldn't have been fun. But he's not even the one that died worse. The one that died the worst was James Garfield. Do you know about Garfield?
Well, he got shot, and then the doctors all had dirty fingers and were sticking their fingers in the hole, and everybody's smoking cigars. So Garfield would have lived, but it was all these unsanitary doctors putting their fingers in the hole. And
he also he laid in a bed in Washington D.C. in the White House for an entire summer, in one of the hottest summers on record at the time.
Oh, wow.
With this infection, because they couldn't get the bullet. They couldn't find the bullet. So not only were they unsanitary, that's true, but they also could not find that bullet. And they even called in, this is true, Alexander Graham Bell had made like this primitive like x-ray machine. And they had him like waving this weird wand at the president, and they did everything they could, and they never got that bullet out. And it's really sad because Garfield was also like one of our most fit presidents. Like he exercised religiously. He was always like a man of action. He liked to be moving all day long. And then they just had him lay in this bed in the heat for so long. But you know, he died well. I think at the end they took him to the seashore by train. They put the president who couldn't move onto a train on a bed, and they took him to the sea before he passed away. But
so who killed him and why?
Well, that was Charles Guiteau. Charles Guiteau's so interesting. He's like, God, how to describe him? He's a lunatic, right? But like in a fun way. Like you could say that John Wilkes Booth was crazy, but not really. He had a politically motivated motive, you know what I mean? And he really believed in a cause. Guiteau was kind of had like delusions of grandeur, and he had spoken to James Garfield briefly, one time, very briefly, and he thought because of that quick interaction that he was going to be appointed like ambassador to France or something like that. And when it didn't happen, when Garfield got elected, he was like, "Oh, I have to shoot this man in the back because he's betrayed me." And Guiteau is one of those like people that are like, I mean, like the serial killer Ted Bundy or somebody where they're very good at lying because they don't have emotions really. So he had created his own religion before he decided to get into politics, and he had tried to start this like utopian community, and he had also practiced law illegally. He had not passed any bar, but he would present himself to people as a lawyer, and he would speak in court. And he, you know, like with any con artist, eventually you get caught, and he would just move on to the next thing. And the final thing he moved to was politics, and it ended with him shooting Garfield. And he was excited after he got arrested because he thought it would help his book. he had written a book, and he thought, oh, now my book will really sell because I've shot the President of the United States.
How did his book do?
I don't know what the sales were. I bet it's not very good. I bet they didn't do that well.
Well, I know, was it William McKinley was
Right.
assassinated?
Leon Czolgosz got him.
And wasn't he like a Polish immigrant or something?
Yes, he was. I think he was Polish. No, I think he was Czech. I think. I'm going from memory here, but in Czolgosz, that's interesting. So he wanted to be an anarchist, right? There was an anarchist movement at the time that really had a lot of people behind it, because workers were treated so badly back then.
Yeah, and the thing about William McKinley is he kind of started the American international, the global intervention of American, like the Navy going around and getting in other skirmishes and
Right.
other people's businesses, and then also he was also pro big business,
Yes.
and for corporations, and not really for the common working guy.
Not at all. He was an old school Republican that they, some of the ideals of Republicans today are kind of built on. Absolutely.
So there's this great gig I do in Arcata, California. It's up in Humboldt County.
Yeah.
And in Arcata, California, in the main square, there's a statue of William McKinley. And so, and then there's also McKinleyville is a few miles from there, but he never went anywhere near there. And so,
why is the statue there?
Probably because these towns were formed around the time that he was assassinated. And
Okay. Yeah.
patriotic
Oh,
people
yeah.
too.
That makes sense.
So, but I had gone there a few times, and I asked people there. It's like a little hippie town, a lot of pot smokers, and it's Humboldt County, and
Yeah.
Humboldt State University's there. So I asked people, why is there the statue? And they said, I heard that he never went there. And so I started Googling and reading, stories. And that's how I learned about William McKinley, starting America's global interventionist policies and being pro big business and against the common working guy.
Yeah.
So then when I went back to Arcata and did this gig again, I would explain this, and then I would say, you should have a statue to the guy who killed that fucking guy. So tell me about the guy who killed him.
I loved how that sounds horrible to say, but I love how he killed him. It's so no, it's kind of a crazy story. So William McKinley went to the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, which that's Buffalo, New York. Back then they would have World's Fair type things. This was a
big
thing
deal.
like that. Yeah. And, it's just a big kind of festival where there's music and food, but also we're selling a new invention called a vacuum cleaner and all this. Okay.
Yeah, like the Chicago World's Fair was the first place to display Edison's light bulb.
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
They were big deals back then.
Right. So Bill McKinley, the president of the United States, goes to this thing, and you can just walk up and shake his hand if you get in a line. So he had hundreds of people in a long line. So this is Leon Czolgosz, the assassin. His incredible master plan was to get in line and wait till he got to the front. And he had a pistol. He had his hand wrapped up like it was wounded, like he had hurt his hand. So the pistol just had a little bit of cloth under it. And when he got to the front of the line, Bill McKinley was like, "Hi," and put his hand out, and Leon Czolgosz just shot it right there in the chest. And the part that I find even a little touching is that Bill McKinley, the crowd was turning on Czolgosz. The crowd, of course, here we have this assassin. Of course, they grabbed him. The men in the crowd grabbed this assassin, and they were going to kill him. They were going to lynch him or something. And the president said, "Take it easy on him, boys. He could not have known." That was his quote. He could not have known. What could he have not known?
What?
That bullets would kill me? I don't know what he meant. But what he meant was, let's have due process. Let's not kill this guy in the street right now. And the president said that while he was bleeding out from bullet holes. So, whatever you think of Bill McKinley's politics, he was pretty good at not having vigilantes kill his own assassin. He at least believed in that.
Yeah, and I'm sure people would dispute my condemnation of the guy. I'm just looking for cheap jokes.
I wouldn't. Of course, that's our job, and I wouldn't dispute your condemnation.
And I don't see anybody else throwing around William McKinley material.
No, I wouldn't dispute your condemnation at all. I often wonder though if some guy shot me and then like I was watching other people about to get that guy, if I'd be like, be careful, don't hurt him. I think it'd be like, get him, kill him,
tear him to pieces.
Yeah, tear him to. Avenge me! But yeah, that's that story, and I think that I always think that those stories are so interesting.
History is fascinating. There's so many just incredible details about things, and that's why like the story you told about John Wilkes Booth blew me away because I had read these books and I thought I knew a lot about the Lincoln assassination, and then here's this incredible factoid that you hit me with that he was a shitty actor.
Nobody cares how he was at acting. But yeah, you can read all the reviews. They're really interesting. People liked him, but he wasn't good.
And that's actually how he got into the Ford Theater, was he was such a well-known actor.
Yeah.
They just thought, oh, sure, going up to the president's booth.
Oh, yeah.
A footnote to the William McKinley statue in Arcata is the last time I was up there, I heard that the local people are trying to have it removed.
Oh, really?
And considering it's such an area of pot smokers and pot growers, it'll probably be replaced with Scooby or Shaggy.
Well, there's so much talk, like last year, the year before, there's a lot of talk about removing the Confederate statues.
Yeah.
A lot of universities are like, should we have these buildings named after guys who owned slaves? And you know what I say? I say, yeah, tear it all down. Come on. It's old. Like, and I think it was like the great-grandson of Robert E. Lee when they were talking about tearing down, no, it was of Stonewall Jackson. He's like great-great-grandson. They were talking about tearing down a Stonewall Jackson statue somewhere, and he was like, you can take the statue out of the town square and put it in a museum somewhere if the history is really important to you, with a plaque that said, this guy fought for the cause of slavery,
Yeah.
Having a statue in the middle of town square, it does kind of like be like, these are our heroes.
Yeah,
these are the people we look up to.
West Virginia's the South, wouldn't you say?
It's poor. I'll say that.
Yeah,
it's hillbilly.
I'm from Florida. Some people don't consider it the South, but I started out on the Southern circuits, and I went everywhere. And I think I think that the conquering North was too lenient on the South to let them put up all these statues and fly their Confederate flags and all this shit, and they should have been more humiliated in defeat, so that these this idea of a glory lost or the South will rise again would have been crushed fucking years ago after the Civil War.
I wonder, that's a really interesting question. It's just like, it feels like the more you punish people, the more they're like, oh yeah? No. I'm coming back and I'm going to get you, Like, it's kind of what happened to Germany, before it became Adolf Hitler's Germany. Is they were like, we're going to levy all these sanctions against them. We're going to punish them for World War I. We're going to teach them a lesson. Well, it made a lot of people, the wrong people, very angry, and eventually they use that anger to propel a terrible regime into power. So,
yeah, I think Germany was properly shamed after World War II.
They were, they were.
And now there's, and I just saw on the news the other day at some rally somewhere in Germany, some guy, because it's illegal to do the Hitler's salute and say Sieg Heil. Mm-hmm. Some guy was doing it, some skinhead. So like I know ugly skinheads and right-wing Nazis are popping up everywhere these days. But,
sure,
but
not, they won't allow it in Germany at all.
Yeah, but I think Germany was properly humiliated after the war.
They really have.
Rightfully
They've
so.
really kept an eye on it ever since. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah,
Which the South didn't get.
The South didn't at all. Right away, they were playing tricks. You know what I mean? Like they were rigging elections and getting those statues up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a book about Nathan Bedford Forrest and the KKK that I haven't read yet because it's this huge hardback, and I'm like, I like to carry books around with me, and I don't want to be like opening this book with the Confederate flag on it, like when I'm sitting in a coffee shop in LA. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll have to read it at home in the dark. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I prefer paperbacks too.
Yeah.
You know, they're nicer to bend and
Yeah.
slap on your knee when something angers you.
Yeah, and you can fit more on your shelf. That's the problem I have right now. It's like you can see it's all spread into the living room, and we got a whole room back there with more stuff, and I'm just out of room. Like, and I have to read on a Kindle now when I want new things, and I don't like it as much.
I'm not getting into it. I still like. A big thrill of mine is I like to go to used bookstores.
Yes.
When I travel all over the world, and I've got favorite ones, and my living room is full of books, and I've got.
You got to send me your list of bookstores because I always make my wife go. Like, no matter where we're at, like when we're in Chiang Mai in Thailand or whatever, I'm like, oh, look, there's a used bookstore. Can we go to that? Like, and I've gotten cool stuff traveling.
Yeah, it's great. And then you find out to print things, and like, I mean, I have no recollection where I found Beware the People Weeping.
Yeah.
Maybe that was Raven's Books in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
There you go.
One of my favorite bookstores is it's called Charlie Burns in Galway, Ireland, and they got like half new, and then they'll have half used books, and the Irish are great readers. So you always find wonderful old books
and great writers too. When I was like a new comedian, like when I started in Chicago in like 2003. I had, of course, no money, and I had an apartment I had to pay for, and I had like this terrible job that paid like $8 an hour, and the only thing I could afford for like a treat for myself, because I didn't even pay for cable, like, was that I would go to this used bookstore in Chicago, and I would get a $2. For $2, you could get like something that would keep me entertained for 2-3 weeks, like, and that was my entertainment for a while. So nerdy, so sad.
I'm with you.
So sad.
Like a lot of people hate flying. I love flying because I read.
Yeah.
So to me, flying is great because it's like, man, I get to. And that's why I hate that. Like CNN is everywhere in the airport, and you get away from the television, and they got the speakers.
Yeah. No, that drives me nuts.
So you get like as far away as you can from the TV screen, so you can read, find a quiet place to read, and then there's a speaker right above you. And then why do we have something that would stress people out of news constantly be blasted at people when they're traveling? Why do you need to know about like the death counts and the disasters and political evil?
It's an excellent question, and I've felt the exact same way. They have the volume up so high. You really have to put on headphones or something to like zone it out. Like, it's really insane. There's kind of like this weird thing, sea change that happened. By the way, I often sound like a Luddite anti-technology old man all the time, but like there's like this thing that happened like a couple years ago where everybody just assumes that you want to be a barrage of information at all times, and it's not good for us. But it's like the assumed thing. It's like just ubiquitous. I really hate it. I really can't stand it. Yeah.
I read something somewhere that, like, in first-class lounges, you're not paying for the luxury. You're paying for the quiet.
Yeah.
It's what they have to offer you.
And I've only gotten a handful of times to be in one of those lounges, and I didn't even realize this till now. But yeah, they're quiet.
They're quiet.
They don't have the TVs blaring at you. Peasants need their educating machines.
They need to be constantly worried about things that they couldn't possibly fix or solve or have any influence over whatsoever.
The lower class people must be fed propaganda as they get on and off of the plane. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So any other historical obsessions that you have?
Oh, geez. I'm trying to think.
I love that you're a reader and you're full of So much great knowledge.
I always am struggling to find ways to use it. You know, how do I bring it on stage at a comedy club? You know, like
I've found ways.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I know you have.
And sometimes it won't come up until years later. Like I wrote a great joke for the World Cup, but it was things that I read about years ago. Like I've been to Chichen Itza. I'm fascinated with ancient cultures.
Yeah.
So the Incas, and that's why I went to Machu Picchu, and then the ancient Mayans. I've been to Chichen Itza, which was the Rome of the Mayan Empire.
Yeah.
And there's pyramids there, and there is intact that massive football field, and it was like a kind of a sideways basketball.
Right. Yeah, they played a sport.
Thing.
Yeah.
And they played it. The ball was actually like the size of a hacky sack. And so anyway, so here's the joke I got. But this was probably 20 years ago that I read about all this. So it took like 20 years for this to,
needed to
the
percolate.
gestation process, and for it to finally pop out as an everlasting gobstopper. I was really into the World Cup. A lot of Americans don't like soccer. The very first game of football was played in Mexico by the ancient Mayans, and the games would last for days. And a shaman witch doctor would interpret what the gods meant by the outcome of the game. And the captain of the losing team would be executed, and the winning team could run into the audience and grab jewelry or any of the women that they wanted. And I don't think Americans will ever get into soccer until we bring those elements back.
That's awesome.
So it took me 20 years to find a way to use that information. But I love the best kind of comedy I've always felt is when you learn something.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when I saw you and I was like, I love this guy. Jared Logan, that's a name I'm going to remember. I want to speak with him on my podcast. And it took 3 years for us to finally have this conversation.
We did it, though. Now we're doing it.
So I have, there's, let me see I've gone on about this on the podcast before, or I'm not sure, but the Battle of Little Bighorn is one of my historical obsessions.
Custer.
It was a great book. I've read like 3 books on it. Custer was a loser, arrogant prick, and he got all those men killed.
Yeah.
Because he wanted glory. He wanted to have a political career.
People told him to pull back, right?
He had another. There was 2 other troops, or 2 other divisions. If he could have waited a day, they would have caught up and they would have overwhelmed the Native Americans. But one of his most famous quotes was that he could lick the entire Indian population with 170 cavalry men.
Wow.
Which is what he had in his little unit.
Because they were so white, like white people just are so much stronger and
Magic
smarter.
Beings.
Yeah.
And with the superior firepower. But the cavalry horses were fed grain, and the Sioux Indians, their horses ate grass, so they were much more agile and could move and things. But the most interesting thing about the Battle of Little Bighorn was that and Custer was it. Oh my God! So in all the treaties, the Sioux Indians, which were in South Dakota and Montana, and those were the primary, the Lokata and Ogallala Sioux were the primary tribes that fought at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Never would they ever give up the Black Hills, which is in the southwest corner of South Dakota. This was their Jerusalem, their magic Holy Land. So Custer went in there on an expedition and said, the gold fever and gold rush, and he said that he had found gold deposits, and then this started, Whitey started going in there.
Yeah.
They could have just respected this small area, but he was hankering for a fight.
He needed a battle. Yeah, he needed a battle to make his career.
But the interesting thing about the Battle of Little Bighorn is the 2 great warriors, Custer and Crazy Horse, had both been demoted before the battle. So Custer had gone back without permission. He just left his troops. Oh, another shitty thing Custer did. When at one point with the Sioux Indian, one of the chiefs had offered him his daughter. And so Custer, a married man, is sleeping in his tent and fucking this young Indian girl, Native American. So a lot of in the Native American mentality, a lot of the people that were fighting at the Battle of Little Bighorn, one thing they couldn't understand that when they offered the daughter, it was like in marriage, right. And they felt that they were family now, and they couldn't understand another thing about Custer, that why he would decide to be fighting when he was supposed to be family, because he took the daughter. I don't know what happened to the daughter. I'm sure he discarded her somewhere.
Sure, yeah.
But then Custer had abandoned his troops and gone back to Michigan to visit his wife. And Custer was a hero of the Civil War. That's where he got made a name for himself and everything. And then he made his own uniforms with the red scarf, right? Very flamboyant, and designed his own thing. So he didn't even wear the standard outfit.
And
so,
the rules didn't apply to him. Clearly, he can go see his wife whenever he wants. Wow.
So he goes back to visit his wife for however long, a month or whatever, and then he got demoted for that. He had gotten in trouble. And then Crazy Horse, when he was a teenager, there was a girl that he loved, and by all accounts, she loved him and whatever, and the girl in the tribe that he really liked. So one day they're going out to hunt, him and the other men of the tribe, and he was already considered like kind of a visionary, like a magic shaman, a guy with more special power. He had a dream that he would never be struck by a bullet and in battle, and in the dream he had a lightning bolt on his face, and his horse had lightning bolts had a lightning bolt on its forehead or cheeks or something. So whenever Crazy Horse went into battle, he would always take whatever paint or whatever I don't know what he used, but he would put a lightning bolt on his forehead, and then he would put the lightning bolt on his horse, and he was never struck by a bullet in battle. So he goes off to hunt, and one of the other tribes member in his tribe also liked the girl and stayed behind, and they were gone for however long, a week or two, and when he came back, this guy, the rival, had married the girl that he loved. And it drove Crazy Horse crazy. He was very unhappy about this. So he grabbed the girl whenever the opportunity came up, and he ran off with her. And they were hiding out somewhere, and then the guy who married her, when he found Crazy Horse, he walked up to him and he shot him in the face with a gun. So there's only one depiction of Crazy Horse that's ever been. It was a drawing. He never had his photo taken, and there's a big chunk of his cheek is missing.
Wow.
So his own tribe member shot him in the face because he ran off with
that's
his
some
girl.
Gangster shit.
Yeah. And then fortunately guns were shitty back then, and like Garfield could last a summer.
Right.
He could take a blast right in the face. And then the tribe, even though he was considered to be a shaman and Mr. Special Powers guy, they demoted him. So that's an interesting factoid knowledge nugget about.
So both guys are going in with something to prove into that battle, right?
Yeah,
because they've been demoted and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like I said, if Custer would have waited, they'd have. But also that ended up being the rally cry for let's slaughter all the Native Americans.
Let's get them all,
yeah,
sure.
After that. So they may have won the battle, but it didn't turn out good for them.
I read, have you heard of the book 1491?
Mm-mm.
That is about...
how like the world changed after Columbus?
It's kind of about what the world was like before he got to North America and South America, the Western Hemisphere, before Europeans arrived. And it's more anthropology than history, so it kind of deals more with like what the cultures were like. But like what we don't realize, like we think about like Indians, in Westerns. I'm a huge Western fan, but like, and they're, they ride on horses and they live in like tents. But like even in the middle of America, the Mississippi, there were cities that were very complex. Like, and they didn't leave remains like Chichen Itza, where it's like a kind of a stone structure. But even now, scientists can go, this is what the book's all about. Now they've got the technology where they can look at these satellite photographs and they can see how these cultures, like very carefully and very scientifically, burned off certain parts of the foliage and grew up other parts, and how they had built these mounds that like kind of housed all these people and created a whole commercial sector. They had these very complex and very intricate cities. And the thing is, when Europeans started landing way over on the East Coast, they would give their diseases to an Indian guy who would walk 100 miles west. That guy would meet somebody else. He would get the disease and walk 100 miles west. So by the time DeSoto and people like that are getting to the Mississippi, those cities are gone. It's like 100 years later, and they were already wiped out. So that's why all of these European records are like, they're savages. They don't know how to like make a gun or whatever. But those cultures were really, really complex. And there's this awesome story in the book about in South America, there was this city that was Disneyland. It was like a city, it was like a religious Disneyland. Nobody lived there really, except for the people that worked in it who were like priests. It didn't export any kind of crop. They didn't make any kind of like trade good that was really useful. But they had built up their brand. And these statues and these kind of characters that they put on display. And they had made the other civilizations in the neighborhood, the other city-states, go, you have to go and visit there. It's amazing. The stuff they've built is amazing. And it was basically Disneyland. They would charge people goods and things to come in and look at these like religious idols and stuff and then leave.
When was this and where is this?
So I read this book probably like last year or the year before, but it was in South America, and I think it was like down in like Chile. So it wasn't the Incas, but it was like in that area of the world. The Incas are in Machu Picchu, right in Peru, right? So it's like down in like Chile and in the...
And they stretch to the top part of Argentina and... Ecuador and the top of Chile.
Yeah, so it's in that area. It's in the Colombia. Andes and stuff. Yeah, there was this city that was just a tourist attraction, and this would have been, it was before Europeans got to the Western Hemisphere in any numbers. So, very very long time ago. It's kind of awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what is the most fascinating thing you can tell me about West Virginia?
Oh boy, that's it really interesting. Well, I do a joke about West Virginia, which is, West Virginia, the only state to secede from the Confederacy. That's the most redneck state. They're more redneck than the Confederacy. So the Confederacy was like, man, fuck this shit, man. And West Virginia was like, no, fuck this shit, man. The Confederacy was like, we gotta stop the blacks. And West Virginia was like, no, we gotta stop the witches and goblins, so that, they also, I say that they got their name wrong, too, West Virginia. Because it's North Dakota, South Dakota, North Carolina, South Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia.
Yeah, why?
Kind of feels like they didn't talk it over with Virginia, doesn't it? Kind of feels like they were like, we're West Virginia, and Virginia was like, sure you are. Yeah, if you say so, just don't come over here.
I don't know if you guys have any compasses.
Yeah, they were the poor people that couldn't build plantations because they lived on the rocky land in the mountains. They, the Appalachian, it's Appalachia is what you call West Virginia. Very rocky. There were no wealthy farmers there. And so when the Civil War came, the Union said, hey, if you stick with us, poor farmers that live in the hills, we'll hook you up. And they said, awesome. We joined the Union as West Virginia, and no one ever hooked them up, and they're poor to this day, and they're real salty about it. Real salty about it.
Where in West Virginia are you from?
I'm from Morgantown.
Oh my God!
Wow. That's where West Virginia University is. So there were always a lot of people coming in from out of state, which I think makes Morgantown very livable, kind of a fun, cool place. But yeah, I've traveled all over West Virginia.
Yeah, they used to be. I started out on the southern circuits in these comedy zones. Had gigs all over West Virginia. I played Morgantown. I think one of the worst gigs I ever did was in Beckley.
Beckley, I know Beckley. I used to go to like a science camp outside of Beckley.
Yeah, I remember they sold carvings out of pieces of coal.
Great, yeah. People are obsessed with coal there. You know, they want our leaders in government to turn back the clock and put coal back in the mountain, please. And then could you please rewind all of the technology that automates it so that men can go down into the mine and get black lungs so that we can all be miners again? That would be great. Please do that for us. And I don't think it's going to happen, guys. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think we need to start thinking about other options. And I'll tell you something else. My dad was a miner. He was a strip miner. My grandfather was a miner.
So what's the difference between a regular miner and a strip miner?
Strip miner. So after a while, the veins that were kind of down, that you would kind of, either way you traditionally think of a miner, you go down into a hole. A lot of those were tapped out, or they found ways to automate them. So what they would do is they would do what's called strip mining. That's where you don't dig a hole so much as you just kind of tear off the top. Like it's coal more near the surface. So you kind of just tear out a valley floor a little bit. You pull out all the foliage. You pull off the topsoil, and there's some coal. And my dad was actually, he helped with that process, but then he also was involved in a lot of the reclamation, where then they go back and they plant trees and things again and try to get it to look like a normal, you know, beautiful natural valley after they've strip mined all this coal. Both of my grandfathers went down into the hole. They went down into the mines. I had one grandfather who died in the mine. He was probably 60 years old. And just a big piece of equipment just rolled over him. Like, it was dangerous down there.
Kind of shit that happens when you're a miner.
It
right?
still happens to guys that still go down in there. I mean, all I'll say about that is, like, I think that, like, maybe it is sad when an industry goes away because towns, their economies dry up. But I can tell you also that a lot of those guys that went down in those mines hoped that their kids wouldn't have to do it.
Right.
Right? That's why they were working their ass off down there. They were hoping that their kids would go find something else to do. So all these guys that are constantly like, bring back the coal industry, I'm like, guys, like, it's a little, it's a little over. Like, let's figure out something else to do.
I saw a documentary. There was an hour thing on Frontline on PBS a year or two ago, and they were showing it was all about the miners and the young guys who are starting to do it now, and the old miners, and they're all like, "It's a terrible way of life."
Yeah,
I never wanted my kids to do this, and guys sick. And
yeah, but it was that kind of work where you could get out of high school, didn't have to go to college, didn't have to really have skill. You could sign up if you were a healthy guy. They send you down in the hole, and you're making right away. You're making enough to have a house and a couple kids, and those kind of jobs, man, they just don't exist anymore. And I get it. It's a hard transition, but it feels like we've been making the transition for the whole time I've been alive. My dad was laid off from the mines when I was a little kid. Like, the writing's been on the wall a while. These jobs are not coming back. There've been a couple Republican. I was born during Reagan. We had Bush Sr. We had Bush Jr. They didn't bring it back. No one's bringing it back. I don't know. I get frustrated because I do try to keep up with stuff in West Virginia. Have you seen or heard of Recovery Boys?
Mm-mm.
You can watch it on Netflix right now. It's this really interesting doc, and it's about the opioid epidemic there, which is very bad.
All over America and all the rural
All over
areas.
America,
Yeah.
and it's pretty bad in West Virginia. And it's in the whole dock is in my hometown. It's in Morgantown, and just one thing in it really struck me, which is like it's about young men who are opioid addicts, and they go into this like recovery program and try to learn to quit all of that, and then they get released back into the real world. And do they succeed or do they not? Some manage to recover, and one guy goes back to his hometown of Wheeling, West Virginia, and he starts using again. So someone from his counseling program comes to talk to him, and he says the funniest thing. He's like, they're asking him why he's using again. He goes, "I'll tell you what, man, there ain't fucking nothing to do here." And I looked it up on TripAdvisor. I looked up what there is to do in Wheeling, West Virginia, and the number one thing to do in Wheeling, West Virginia...
Heroin.
Well, on TripAdvisor, it says, number one, suspension bridge.
Oh, wow.
That's the number one thing to do.
Wow.
So I guess it's jump off the bridge or do meth. I guess those are your choices.
Wow. So, are you doing? So, it's amazing. Your father was a miner, and you're a comedian in LA, but also you've had a pretty successful writing career.
Yeah.
I live right next to CBS Television City, and I ran into you walking out of the gate one day, and it was like, wow, I know somebody who works in the Dream Factory.
Yes, here in the Dream Factory with our high walls and locked doors.
And all your catered bagels.
Yes, don't let the rabble in. Yes. I was at James Corden's show for 3 years. Had a great time. Then I left. I worked on a movie this summer.
Well, before we get to the movies,
so
how difficult is that, like, turning over? Because I had a late night talk show in Amsterdam, but it was once a week.
Okay.
So it was really like kind of luxurious work pace to like to come up with a monologue in a week's time. I couldn't imagine like every day.
Well, I think you're being modest, because it's always hard, because if you have a week to come up with it, then you're really kind of being very careful, right? You're probably being more precious with the stuff you're putting out there. Sometimes the frustration of a daily kind of a joke routine is that there's no time. It's 4:30 and he's walking out on the mark at 5, and we don't have a great joke about this topic yet. It happens sometimes, But James Corden, a scholar and a gentleman, and always a sweet man, actually a great boss, and he would try anything. That's the nicest thing about James when it came to delivering jokes. I was mostly just a joke man that helped write the monologue. I did get some other bits and things on, but I mainly worked on his monologue, and he would go, "What the hell? Give it a shot." For these hosts, like, I mean, you probably had like a rubric when you were hosting your own show, like, I'll do this kind of bit, but this kind doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I would reject shit all the time. Yeah.
Sure, and James would too, and he should, but like, he also, to me, would try a lot, because he was new to that game, and he was open-minded, man. He was like, what the hell? Let's do a bit about me wanting to have sex with a horse. Let's do it. And he would do it right in the monologue. So that was always really fun to see him try something crazy, and he was always up for it.
He seems like he seems the kind of guy who could wing it and improv. Anything into charming, funny glory.
Yeah, I mean, he's a charming dude. I got way better at joke writing from having to churn it out. But I'll be specific in how I got better. I think that you're writing for a specific kind of humor when you're writing that show, and it's not necessarily the kind of thing I would take on stage as a stand-up. But what I did learn kind of a better work ethic. Like, even if I'm working on my stuff for me as a stand-up, which I would express myself very differently. I would use a different type of humor. Like, I probably should do what I did at that job, which is get up every day
and work on
and clock in and spend a couple hours on it. Yeah.
I read years ago that Johnny Carson didn't like having comedians as writers because he felt that they would keep the best jokes for themselves.
That's interesting. I feel like nothing that I wrote for a late night television show would be necessarily something that I would take into my personal act. You know, when I'm talking on stage, like even if I'm doing some kind of observational thing about something I saw at the coffee shop, I still feel like I'm talking from a very, very personal place. And when I'm writing a joke about something that Donald Trump Jr. said in a tweet earlier that day, like that's never really something that would end up in my act. So,
right.
It's very different style. It's all I always would make fun of late night. It's almost kabuki. It's so formalized and all the different, you know, little customs and ways that you have to do it and deliver it and present it. Like it's such a formalized genre of comedy.
And now you're doing like it's a lot of punch up work on movies and stuff. So
yes.
Is that like to make the dialogue more snappy and?
Yeah, and you know, not all movies use a punch up writer, but I just got off a movie and it was what a great gig. Like very grateful. My friend Kumail Nanjiani kind of helped introduce me to some people, and then I applied for this job and I got it writing for this new movie that's coming out and. Yeah, you basically go through the entire script and you're like, okay, here's the joke that's in here. It's already pretty funny. What are 5 others they could possibly make in this moment? And then I realized that it wasn't just the jokes I had to come up with alternatives for. It was everything. Because it felt like sometimes they would come to me and be like, hey, the actor doesn't want to say I found this on the table. What could he say? And I'd be like, he found it on the shelf, and they'd be like, good, that's great. So I ended up having to kind of go over and over through the script through every line and come up with kind of alternatives you could use. And it's so exciting. Movies are just exciting to watch someone film them. Like they blew up a car some nights, or there'd be a martial arts fight another night. Like, so great, so exciting.
I've only worked on a couple of small movies through the years. I can imagine.
That was my first experience with like a movie. Like, yeah, I'd worked on quite a bit of TV here and there, but yeah.
So how much stand-up are you still doing?
Well, now that's what I'm pushing right now. So I've got a little time, and I now understand that, you know, stand-up really takes your time to develop it and like get a chunk of material. So I've been just I've done like a show every night for the past 2 months, and I'm about run out of shows in LA, but I was writing new material, so that's why I'm going up a lot in LA, because I know the audience is here, and I know the comics who are booking me, so I can fail, and a lot of times nobody's paid any money, so I can fail, and it's okay. And I'm really enjoying that. That's my favorite part, is when you come up with a new joke that works. That's the exciting part.
Yeah.
The big paycheck later when you do it at some club or on a TV show, it's like, people think it's like so exciting to get the TV spot, and it is exciting, but like, you already did all the fun work. At that point, the hardest part was getting them to book you on the show or something, like the night you auditioned for the guy or whatever. Like, that was the real moment. Like, once you're on the show, it doesn't matter. They'll add laughs, so they'll edit you. Like, this is my favorite part of it, is running around and doing these little bar shows and stuff.
That's great. One new joke, I always feel, makes everything new.
Yes.
Like when I have a great new joke, like 2 or 3 jokes before, I'm already thinking it's coming up. It's in the chamber.
Yeah.
You know, and then
you can
it gives a freshness to everything else.
Yeah, you can take out like that 30 minutes that you've been doing for a while that you need. You need to always be perfecting that, because that's what's paying your bills. But if you could just inject a couple new things in there, it helps your own energy. You start saying the old stuff in a new way because it's coming out of a new bit or whatever. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to the South in October. I'm going to be in Atlanta, Asheville, North Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, Huntsville, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, and then I'm ending at my college I went to in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going to do.
You didn't go to Rhodes College.
I didn't go to Rhodes. I'm going to the College of Rhodes right now.
Where did you go to college in Memphis?
The University of Memphis. Nice. It was Memphis State until I think right before I started going there. I had a full scholarship, and the concept of me going out of state was insane to me and my family at the time. We didn't know from college, so I think my mom went to college at the same time I did, part of the time, to become a nurse. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Cool.
So, yeah, all of that will be on my website. If anybody is listening and you live in those places, like,
go see Jared Logan,
please.
ladies and gentlemen. And
I got new stuff. I swear, it's great.
And then if he pauses and he can't remember some jokes, insist that he tell the John Wilkes Booth story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jared, I'm glad. I'm glad we got to sit down and have this talk, man. I'm happy to know someone who is also has a head full of knowledge nuggets.
Tom, I'm going to force you into a new friendship. I know it's hard for men our age to do that, but I'm going to be texting you all the time and asking you to hang out. So I hope you're ready for that.
I'm ready for that, Jared.
Okay,
good. I want you to come over and look at my book collection.
I definitely want to do that.
Yeah. And in closing, do you have any words of wisdom or advice you would like to give to the people of the earth?
Oh boy, I wish I had been prepared for this. What do I always say? Oh God. Well, okay. So I'll be brief. We're ending here. I think I read in this book called The War of Art that it's good before you write anything to say a prayer. So I have a prayer to Thoth. We were talking about Egyptian.
Yeah.
Thoth was the ibis god of writing. You can find it online. It's really great. I recommend anybody, before you start writing. Thoth. He was the god of knowledge and writing in ancient Egypt.
Is that thought without a T?
Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Thoth is the way they say this god. He has like a bird head. But there's this great prayer to him. You can find it online. And it talks about how important writing is and how anybody who can write can become a magistrate. And it's like what people would say when they would get to their scribe jobs. So I recommend, that's my word of wisdom, is go check out the prayers to Thoth.
Do you know, how does it go? Do you know?
Oh gosh, it's like,
give me the power to
it kind of is.
Move
it's like,
people with words.
oh great and noble ibis, oh the great one of Unu. There's all these words I don't understand. You are part of the Ennead, which is some sort of, whole pantheon they had, but it goes on, and it says, basically it says, when you read it out, and it's very poetic, anybody that can write can run this shit, can run this whole country.
Wow.
That's the part I like.
Wow, I like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thoth.
All
right. Jared, thanks for being my friend. I'm going to look forward to rejoicing in our friendship.
Man, I'm thrilled.
All right,
I'm thrilled.
Long may you run, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
Long may you run. A handshake.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.